She thought this cruise was the best decision of her life. At just 17, Leah finally left her small town, smiling at the ocean, sending happy pictures to her family, believing her future was finally beginning. She felt safe on that huge ship, surrounded by lights, music, and laughter, not knowing that the person she trusted the most on board, the powerful captain himself, was quietly leading her straight into the darkest, final mistake she would ever make, not knowing that this one choice, that felt so perfect, would end up costing her life, and expose dark secrets hiding behind the captain's perfect uniform and the shining lights of that dream cruise ship. The port city had been hot and crowded. Families dragged suitcases. Vendors shouted. Car horns blared. The huge cruise ship waited at the dock like a floating city, white and shining, with rows of balconies and colorful flags. For most people, this cruise was a dream. For the girl, it felt even bigger than that. Her name was Leah. She was 17, with wide, hopeful eyes, the kind of girl who still believed that the future could only get better. She was not a rich passenger. She was there as a young worker, part of a special youth hiring program. It was her first time leaving her country, her first time seeing the ocean this close, her first time standing under something as massive as a cruise ship and thinking, this is my chance. Leah had grown up in a small town where nothing much ever happened. She used to watch videos of cruise ships online, seeing the pools, the theaters, the food, the smiles. She told her friends that one day she would work on one and then travel the world. Her parents were worried. She was young. The world was big and dangerous. But Leah kept saying that she needed to help her family, that she could send money home, that she would be careful. She promised to call, to text, to stay safe. To her, this ship felt like freedom. High above her, looking down from the bridge level, the captain watched the passengers arrive. He had been at sea longer than Leah had been alive. To many people, he seemed like a hero, a strong, experienced man who guided thousands of lives across the water. To the company, he was valuable. To the crew, he was powerful. To himself, he was untouchable. But inside, the captain had his own problems. His marriage at home was falling apart. He felt old, invisible, and lonely. On the ship, he was treated with respect. People smiled at him, listened to him, obeyed him. On land, he felt like just another aging man being pushed aside by time. He had learned how easy it was to cross lines at sea, when normal rules felt weaker. There were no neighbors to watch, no family to interrupt, no school teachers to ask questions. Just water on all sides, and people who would leave after a week and never see each other again. He had already broken small rules. A drink during working hours, a flirt with a passenger, a message to a crew member that was not appropriate. Nothing that made the news. Nothing that reached the company's main office. Little lines. Tiny steps. But every step made the next one easier. Leah did not know this when she first came aboard. To her, the captain was just part of the ship's magic. She saw him in his uniform at the welcome event, smiling for photos with families, standing tall with his cap and badges. The lights made his metal shine. The music was loud. People cheered. If you enjoy deep, slow-burn true crime stories like this, where every small choice leads to something bigger and darker, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel, and it means you will not miss the next part of this case. Now back to the story. Leah started her duties in the lower decks, cleaning cabins, helping serve in a buffet, smiling at passengers who barely noticed her name tag. She worked long hours, but she did it with energy. She sent pictures to her parents of sunsets and swimming pools, telling them that she was okay, that everything was wonderful. Life on board was busy and strange. There were strict rules, but also secret corners, staff parties in hidden rooms, whispered gossip in the hallways, people from many different countries, all living in narrow cabins below the rich passengers. Slowly, Leah learned the rhythm of the ship, when the kitchens were loudest, when the decks were quiet, which elevators hardly anyone used, which officers were kind, and which ones she should avoid. The captain's name kept coming up in conversations. Some crew members praised him as a good leader. Others warned that he liked attention from younger women. Nobody ever said it in a formal complaint. It always stayed as rumors, quiet stories passed over late-night snacks. Leah heard some of these whispers, but she did not think they were about her. Why would a powerful man like that look twice at a girl like her, just 17, with a cheap suitcase and dreams too big for her income? Still, every time she walked through the upper decks and saw him from afar, something in her chest tightened. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the feeling of being very small near someone who could change her whole life with one decision. Up on the bridge, the captain noticed her sooner than she realized. The way she moved quickly to help passengers. The way she smiled even when she was tired. The way she seemed grateful to be there. To a man hungry for control and validation, that kind of innocence could look like an invitation. And so, little by little, their paths began to cross more often. A chance meeting in a hallway, a friendly comment in the dining area, a special smile in the staff lounge. They did not know it yet, but each small meeting was another step toward that cabin on that terrible night, when the music on deck would hide the sound of a young girl's last struggle. Something bad was moving toward Leah, quiet and slow, like a dark wave in the distance. She felt only the fresh wind on her face, the bright lights, the promise of a better future. She did not see the danger yet, but soon she would. Life on the ship settled into a pattern that felt almost like a small town floating on water. Every morning, Leah woke before sunrise in the tiny cabin she shared with another young worker. The air was always a little stuffy. The metal walls felt close. The thin curtain never fully blocked the hallway light, but to her, it still felt like a step forward. She was not in her old room back home anymore. She was on a ship that moved from country to country. She was in motion. She would wash her face in a sink barely wider than a dinner plate, tie her hair back, and check her phone. There were always messages from home. Her mother asked if she was eating well. Her father told her that they were proud of her. Her little brother sent photos with silly faces, trying to make her laugh. Leah kept telling them that she was fine. She said that the work was hard, but that she liked it. She said that the ocean looked beautiful at night, that the lights on the ship made it feel like a movie. She did not tell them about the sore feet, the long shifts, or the moments when she felt so tired that she wanted to cry. She did not tell them about the captain either. At first, he was just part of the background of her new life. She saw him during official events, standing straight in his uniform, shaking hands with guests. He walked with the calm of someone who believed he owned the ground under his feet, even if that ground was made of steel and floated above deep water. Then, slowly, her world began to bend closer to his. It started with small interactions that seemed harmless. He would pass her in a hallway and ask how her first contract was going. He would stop by the buffet and make a comment about how hard the staff worked. He would nod in her direction during safety meetings, as if he recognized her among the many faces. For a girl who had grown up feeling invisible, being noticed by the most powerful man on the ship felt strange and exciting. It made her stand up a little straighter, try a little harder. She thought that maybe it meant she was doing well. She thought that being seen was the same as being valued. From his side, the captain watched her with growing interest. He knew that relationships between high-ranking officers and much younger staff were frowned upon. There were rules in place, written down in serious documents. But rules on a ship can feel different. Out at sea, far from land, power often rewrites its own limits. He told himself that he was just being friendly, that he was helping a young worker feel more welcome, that she was almost an adult, and that she was mature. Each excuse he made for himself became another stone in the road. He was building toward something darker. Around them, the ship kept moving from port to port. Families got on and off. New passengers brought fresh energy. Old ones left with sunburned faces and full memory cards. But one group never changed, the crew. They stayed. They worked. They carried secrets in the same corridors day after day. In the staff cafeteria, Leah heard stories, not just about passengers who were rude or drunk, but about things that people were too nervous to speak loudly about. There were rumors of officers who got too close to workers, stories of young girls who had been given special attention and then left the ship early. Their contracts quietly ended. No one could ever prove anything. No one wanted to risk their job. Most people had families back home, depending on the money they sent. So the stories always ended the same way, with a shrug, a worried look, and a change of subject. Leah felt a chill when she heard these things. For a moment, she wondered if she should keep her distance from anyone with too much power. But then she remembered how kind the captain had seemed when he spoke to her, how he asked if she was settling in, how he smiled in a soft, almost fatherly way. You can see how a mind can trick itself when it wants something. Leah wanted to believe that the world was mostly good. She wanted to believe that people in high positions were there because they were honorable. She did not want to imagine that the man steering this giant ship might be dangerous. Besides, she had bigger things to worry about. Her hours were long and irregular. Some days, she worked from morning until late at night, cleaning cabins that passengers had left in messy states. On other days, she had breaks that lined up with sunsets. She would go to the crew deck, look out at the red and orange sky, and feel the wind against her face. Those were the moments when she felt truly free. No one was calling her name. No one was giving her orders. It was just her and the ocean, and it felt like anything was possible. During one of these quiet evenings, the captain appeared beside her on the crew deck. He was not supposed to spend much time there. His usual place was the bridge or the guest areas, but he had his reasons. He said that he liked to see how the crew relaxed. He said that it helped him understand their lives. For Leah, it was surprising to see him there without his hat, without the stiff formality. He seemed more human, more relaxed. He asked about her family. He asked how she liked the job. He asked if she ever got homesick. She answered politely. She tried to keep it formal. But the more he listened, the more comfortable she felt. He had a way of making her feel that her small life mattered. If you have ever been young and far from home, you know how powerful that feeling can be. Over the next weeks, these small meetings continued. Sometimes he would appear near the buffet and tell her that she was doing good work. Sometimes he would pass by while she was cleaning and ask if she was getting enough rest. Sometimes he would mention that he remembered being young and feeling lost at sea. To someone outside, these moments might look like warning signs. A much older man paying special attention to a teenage girl in a closed environment with a strict power structure. But inside the situation, it did not always feel like danger. It felt like attention. It felt like being chosen. There were other signs, too. A senior crew member pulled Leah aside one day and told her quietly that she should be careful with officers. The woman said that some men use their rank to get what they wanted. She said that Leah should never be alone with anyone higher up in private areas. She added that if something ever made her uncomfortable, she needed to speak up. Leah nodded and thanked her. Inside, she felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She did not want to be seen as naive. She told herself that she could take care of herself. She thought that people worried too much. The captain, on his side, began to push the line a little more. He started to send small messages through the internal ship system, asking how she was doing, or suggesting that she could visit certain decks when her shift ended because the view was nice. He hinted that he knew her schedule. He hinted that he could make things easier for her if she ever needed a favor. A later break. A better cabin next contract. A recommendation. These offers might not sound like much to someone living a normal life on land, but to a young worker on a cruise ship, they were huge. They were promises of comfort in a world where every day was hard. Sometimes, late at night, when the ship was quiet and Leah lay in her bunk unable to sleep, she thought about those offers. She wondered what they truly cost. Was he just being kind? Or did he want something in return? She did not fully answer that question for herself. She pushed it away. She told herself that she was overthinking. She told herself that nothing bad would happen if she was careful. Meanwhile, small changes were happening around her. One of her friends, another young worker, suddenly left the ship mid-contract. People whispered different stories about why. Some said that the girl was sick. Others said that she had broken rules. A few hinted that she had been too close with someone in uniform. Leah asked what had really happened. No one could give a clear answer. The truth seemed to sink into the deep water below, heavy and hidden. As the crew's days blended together, the distance between Leah and the captain grew shorter. He invited her to attend a special staff reception in one of the nicer lounges, saying that he liked to reward hard workers. She felt nervous but honored. She borrowed a dress from a friend and tried to make her hair look nice. At the reception, there were drinks, music, and a soft, golden light that made everyone look more glamorous. Other officers were there, but the captain's eyes kept finding her. He made sure she had a drink in her hand. He made sure she felt seen. If someone watching from the outside had paused the scene right there and asked you what you thought would happen next, maybe you would feel uneasy. Maybe you would say that this looked wrong, that the age gap was too big, that the power difference was dangerous, that someone should step in. On that ship, though, the night went on. People laughed. Cameras flashed. The sea outside stayed black and silent. Slowly, the idea that it might be okay for her to visit the captain's private area did not feel as impossible as it once had. The corridor she used to avoid now looked less scary. The door that once seemed off limits now looked like a place where she might be welcomed. The danger was no longer far away, like a dark wave on the horizon. It was moving closer, step by step, wrapping itself around Leah's life like the ship wrapped itself around the ocean. She still did not see the full shape of it. But one quiet evening, when a message came inviting her to stop by the captain's quarters after her shift, she stared at the screen for a long time, her heart beating faster, knowing deep down that whatever she chose in that moment could change everything. The message sat on Leah's small phone screen like a glowing secret. It was simple. It said that the captain wanted to see her in his quarters after her shift to discuss her future on the ship. It mentioned that she was a hard worker, that he saw potential in her, that he might be able to help her with better positions later. Her heart beat faster as she read it again and again. On the surface, it sounded like an opportunity. On a cruise ship, promotions and good recommendations were everything. A few words from the captain could move you from cleaning cabins to working in guest services, from the lower decks to the nicer ones, from long, painful shifts to something a little more human. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that this was not normal. She lay on her bunk, feeling the ship's gentle vibration under her. Her roommate snored softly, turned toward the wall. The air conditioning hummed. Every sound felt too loud. You might think that in moments like this, the right choice is obvious. But for someone young, far from home, in a world where power is everything, nothing feels simple. Leah thought of her parents, of all the hopes they had placed on this job. She thought of the money she wanted to send home. She thought of her dream of traveling, of building a better life. She also thought of the older woman who had warned her about officers, the sudden departure of her friend, the rumors whispered in the cafeteria. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could ignore the message. She could say she was tired. She could pretend she never saw it. But what if that made him angry? What if it hurt her chances? What if saying no to the captain meant the end of everything she had worked for? She typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, she rose short, polite message saying that she would come by after a shift. Once she hit send, her chest felt heavy, like someone had placed a stone there. The next day passed in a strange blur. Leah moved through her duties like a ghost. She smiled at passengers, made beds, cleaned bathrooms. Her hands worked on automatic, but her mind kept jumping ahead to the evening. Around her, the ship continued its usual dance. Children screamed with joy in the pool. Old couples held hands on the deck. Groups of friends posed for photos in front of fake backdrops. The sun burned bright, and the sea looked harmless. Inside the crew areas, the air was different. A supervisor reminded everyone to follow the rules. A memo about professional behavior was posted on a notice board, part of routine training. Leah stared at the words "zero tolerance for harassment" and felt a strange twist in her stomach. If the rules were so clear, why did the situation feel so confusing? During a short break, she sat alone in the staff cafeteria. Her food grew cold as she pushed it around the plate. A co-worker sat down across from her and asked if she was okay. She said she was just tired. She did not mention the message. Sometimes victims do not stay silent because they are foolish. Sometimes they stay silent because they are afraid of being blamed, or ignored, or punished. Leah had seen how complaints could vanish. She had seen how people lost contracts quietly after speaking up. Later that day, she passed the captain in a corridor. He gave her a small, knowing look. Not too long, not too obvious, but enough to tell her that he expected her to remember their meeting. She looked away quickly, her cheeks warm. She told herself that she was overreacting, that maybe this was all innocent. Maybe he really did just want to help. Hope can be blinding when you want something badly enough. Still, that quiet inner voice did not fully die. It simply got quieter, buried under layers of fear and wishful thinking. As evening came, the ship changed mood. The hallways filled with the sounds of music and laughter. The restaurants turned on their soft lights. In the theater, performers prepared for the night's show. People dressed up for photos in front of sparkling backdrops. The staff's radios crackled. Orders were given. Plates clattered. Glasses clinked. Leah's shift finally ended. She went back to her tiny cabin, washed her face again, and changed into a cleaner uniform. She stared at herself in the small mirror above the sink. She did not look like a child, but she did not feel like a full adult either. She was in that thin, fragile space in between. Old enough to work, to travel, to send money home. Young enough to still believe that authority meant safety. She thought about canceling. Her fingers toyed with the phone. She imagined sending a message saying she was sick. But she also imagined the captain's reaction, the possible coldness, the closed doors in the future. In the end, she left her cabin and walked down the long, narrow corridor, her feet heavy. As she made her way toward the upper staff section, she passed other crew members. Some were laughing, some were tired, some gave her friendly nods. She wondered if anyone could see the fear in her eyes. What would you do if you were her? Would you turn back? Would you ask for help? Or would you keep walking, telling yourself that nothing bad would really happen? She reached the hallway that led to the captain's private area. It was quieter there, the carpet thicker, the lights softer. This part of the ship felt different, as if it belonged to another world. She stood in front of his door, staring at the number plate. For a moment she froze. Her breath came in shallow pulls. The hum of the ship's engines seemed louder. Then she lifted her hand and knocked. There was a short pause. Then the door opened. The captain stood there, no hat, uniform slightly relaxed but still neat. He smiled a little too warmly, stepped aside, and gestured for her to come in. His tone was smooth, calm, like this was the most natural thing in the world. She stepped inside. The cabin was bigger than anything she had seen for staff. There was a large bed, a sofa, a desk with neatly arranged papers, a small bar with bottles of expensive-looking alcohol. The air smelled of cologne and something else she could not name. He closed the door behind her. Inside, Leah felt a strange mix of awe and unease. Part of her wanted to be impressed. Part of her wanted to leave. He asked her about her work, about her family, about her dreams for the future. He poured himself a drink and offered her one. She hesitated and said she was fine. He insisted gently, saying that one small glass would not hurt. She took it, more out of pressure than desire. The drink burned her throat. Her hands felt slightly shaky as she held the glass. He talked about how hard life could be for young crew members, how the company did not always appreciate them, how he tried to look out for those who showed promise. His words were wrapped in concern, but underneath, there was something else. A weight, a test. He told her he could help her move up. He hinted at a better future. He reminded her that many people on the ship would be happy to have the captain on their side. All the while, he stood a little too close. His eyes stayed on her longer than felt normal. Leah's heart pounded. She smiled politely, but inside, alarm bells were ringing louder now. She suddenly remembered every warning, every rumor, every half-finished story in the cafeteria. She tried to step back, to put more distance between them. She said that she was grateful for his time, that she should probably go rest, that she did not want to keep him from his duties. In that moment, she reached for the thin line that still separated danger from safety. This was the last chance. The captain's face changed slightly. The soft, friendly mask slipped, just for a second. His eyes hardened. His jaw tightened. It was like watching a calm sea turn rough in a single gust of wind. He moved between her and the door, not obviously, but clearly enough that she noticed. The cabin felt smaller. The air felt heavier. He told her that she was special, that not everyone got this kind of attention, that she should think carefully about how she responded. His voice stayed calm, but there was an edge now, a coldness under the warmth. Leah felt a wave of fear rise in her chest. She put her glass down on the desk with a small clink. Her hands were shaking more now. She said again that she should go, that she had an early shift, that she was tired. He did not move. The music from the ship's upper decks faintly reached the room, muffled and far away. People above them were dancing, laughing, making memories. Down here, in this private cabin, time felt slower and sharper. You might want someone to burst into the room right now. A friend, a supervisor, anyone. You might want the fire alarm to ring or the ship to suddenly tilt so hard that everyone had to rush out. But nothing like that happened. It was just the two of them, the closed door, and the power that hung between them like a lock chain. The captain took a small step closer. Leah's back brushed against the edge of the desk. The last exit in her mind started to fade, like a light being slowly turned down. And in that quiet, tense cabin, with the ocean pressing in from all sides and the ship cutting through the dark water, the first moment of the crime began to form, just before everything would cross a line that could never be uncrossed. For a second after the captain stepped closer, time did not move. Leah felt the edge of the desk pressing into her back. The cabin, which had seemed large and impressive when she first stepped in, now felt like a box with no air. The low hum of the ship's engines vibrated up through the floor. Her heart pounded so loudly that it almost drowned out everything else. The captain spoke in a smooth voice, telling her that he cared about her career, that he wanted to guide her, that this was a private conversation between two adults. He reminded her that she had come to his cabin by choice. He said that many people would be jealous of the attention she was getting. On the surface, his words sounded kind. Underneath, they felt like chains. Over the past weeks, he had already crossed lines. He had kept her back after meetings. He had touched her shoulder when there was no need. He had asked personal questions that had nothing to do with work. In small, careful steps, he had turned something that should have been professional into something secret and wrong. Now, in this closed cabin, those steps reached a dark end. He moved closer again. Leah turned her face away and tried once more to step to the side. She said that she really needed to go. She told him that she was tired, that she had an early shift, that people would notice if she stayed too long. He told her that no one would question her being there. He reminded her that he was the captain, that he decided what was too long. When she tried to slip past him, he reached out and grabbed her arm. It was not a gentle touch anymore. It was firm, controlling. She felt his fingers dig into her skin. Fear shot through her chest like cold lightning. Leah pulled her arm back and told him that she did not want this, that she needed to leave. Her voice shook. She was not screaming, but there was clear panic in her words. She tried to keep the situation calm, hoping that if she stayed polite, nothing would explode. In that moment, he had a choice. He could have stepped aside and opened the door. He could have let her leave, said he was sorry, blamed it on stress, promised himself never to cross that line again. He could have faced the shame of what he had already done and walked away from making it worse. Instead, something inside him snapped. Maybe it was his pride. Maybe it was his fear that she would tell someone. Maybe it was years of getting away with small abuses that had taught him he always had control. He blocked her path again and raised his voice, telling her that she was overreacting, that she should be grateful, that no one would believe her if she complained. He reminded her who he was and who she was, a captain with power and a 17-year-old worker on her first contract. the room filled with tension, thick and choking. Leah tried to move toward the door anyway. She did not care about promotions or praise anymore. All she wanted now was to get out of that cabin. When she reached for the handle, he grabbed her again, harder this time. She twisted, trying to pull free. Her glass fell from the desk and hit the floor with a dull thud, spilling what little drink was left. What happened next did not look like a movie fight. There were no clever moves, no clear lines. Just panic, fear, and anger mashed together in a small room. Leah struggled. She pushed at him with all her strength. She told him to stop. She tried to duck away, to break his grip, to make space between them. He tried to hold her still. His control, the thing he was used to, was slipping. He was not in command of the moment anymore. He was losing it. He shoved her once, trying to force her back, maybe to pin her, maybe to make her stop fighting. Her foot slipped on the drink on the floor. The back of her leg hit the edge of the rug. She lost her balance. She went down hard, her head striking the corner of the desk on the way. There was a sick, heavy sound. Then silence. Leah crumpled to the carpet, one arm bent under her, the other outstretched. For a heartbeat, the captain just stared, stunned. This was not what he had planned. He had told himself a different story about how this night would go. He had imagined control, not chaos. He had seen himself as powerful, not as someone standing over a motionless girl on the floor. He knelt down beside her, calling her name, shaking her shoulder. There was no answer. Her chest did not rise. Her eyes stared partly open, unfocused. His hands hovered over her, unsure of what to do. He checked for a pulse with fingers that would not stop trembling. Nothing. The room suddenly felt tiny, like the walls were closing in. The ship's hum now sounded like a roar in his ears. In one awful instant, the captain understood what he had done, what this meant, how far beyond the line he had stepped. This was not an affair. It had never truly been one. It was an abuse of power from the start, and now it had turned into something even worse. A crime that could not be smoothed over with smiles and quiet transfers. He tried to start chest compressions, clumsy and desperate, pushing on her chest while begging her under his breath to breathe, to move, to wake up. Nothing happened. Panic and regret crashed over him in cold waves. He stopped and sat back, his uniform now wrinkled and damp with sweat. His mind raced. Should he call for help? Should he say it was an accident? Should he claim she came to his cabin willingly and slipped? Could he hide this? Could he hide a body on a ship full of cameras and people? While he was frozen, the clock kept ticking. Up above, the music played. Passengers cheered at some show. A child laughed. A couple kissed on a balcony. The world went on, not yet aware that a 17-year-old girl had just died on the captain's floor. Then someone knocked on the door. One of the nearby crew members had heard the earlier thud, the raised voices, the strange quiet afterward. It had bothered him. He had tried to ignore it at first. No one likes to get in the captain's business. But after a few minutes, he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He knocked again. The captain lurched to his feet, his mind scrambling for a story. He opened the door just a little, standing partly in the way, saying that everything was fine, that he was resting, that he did not want to be disturbed. But the crew member saw past him. He saw just enough of the room to feel his stomach drop, a bare foot on the carpet, a body on the floor. He pushed the door wider and stepped in. His shout brought others. Security was called. The ship's doctor rushed in with a medical bag, already fearing the worst. The hallway filled with whispers and pale faces as more staff tried to see what was happening. In the cabin, the doctor checked Leah's neck, her eyes, her breathing. After a short time that felt like forever, he looked up with a heavy expression and shook his head. She was gone. The scene you saw at the very beginning of this story was unfolding again now, but from the inside. The captain sitting against the wall, his face empty. The young girl on the floor, her life over. The staff crowding the doorway, trying to understand what they were seeing. Security sealed off the room. The ship's internal investigation team was notified. High-ranking officers who had always smiled at the captain now spoke to him in cold, careful tones. They asked him what had happened. He told them that she had slipped, that she had fallen, that he had tried to save her. He left out the parts about pressure and fear and the arm grabbed too hard. But even in that first hour, cracks began to show in his story. One of the security officers checked the ship's internal camera system. While there was no camera inside the captain's cabin, there were cameras in the hallway. They showed Leah arriving alone. They showed no sign that she was drunk or unsteady. They showed the time she went in. Another camera showed the crew member coming to the door, then returning later with concern. The doctor pointed out the bruises that were already forming in places that did not match a simple fall. The angle of the injury on her head raised more questions. The marks on her arm from where she had been grabbed began to darken. The crew member who had warned Leah weeks earlier felt sick when she heard the news. Her mind raced back to their quiet conversation, to the fear she had tried to express, to the way Leah had said she could handle herself. On the lower decks, rumors spread like fire. Some said there had been a fight. Others said it was an accident. Some whispered the word murder with wide eyes, looking around to be sure no officer was near. The company was contacted on land. Legal teams were alerted. The ship's next port of call was informed that a young crew member had died under suspicious circumstances in the captain's cabin. When the ship reached port, it did not feel like a normal arrival. Passengers lined the rails, confused by the quiet tension in the air. They watched as police officers and investigators came on board. They saw the serious faces, the notebooks, the cameras. They felt a shift in the mood, from holiday joy to something colder and sharper. Leah's body was taken off the ship in a covered stretcher, hidden as much as possible from the guests' eyes. Some still saw. Some took pictures, without thinking about the family that would one day see those images. The captain, who used to stand tall at the top of the gangway, greeting important visitors, now stood in front of officers who were there to question him. He repeated his story. She came to talk about her job. She slipped. She fell. He tried to help. He left out his messages to her. He left out the late-night invitations. He left out the earlier private talks. But investigators began to collect phones, to request logs, to speak to crew members one by one. Leah's roommate told them about the message that had come the night before. She told them how nervous Leah had been. She told them that Leah had not talked about a secret romance, only about fear she did not know how to name. Other crew members spoke about previous warnings, about strange behavior, about the sudden leaving of other young women whose stories had never been fully told. The picture slowly began to form. A powerful man, a pattern of boundary crossings, a young girl, a closed room, a death that could not be explained away as a simple fall. By the time the initial investigation at port was complete, the police had enough doubts to take a harder step. Passengers watched from a distance, some on balconies, some in the terminal, as officers walked the captain off the ship. This time, he was not in full uniform. His hat was gone. His shoulders were not as straight. His hands were not free. They were cuffed in front of him. Some crew members turned away, unable to watch. Others stared, tears in their eyes, feeling a strange mix of sadness for the girl and cold anger toward the man who had been trusted with so much power. On land, cameras waited. News reporters began to circle. Words like underage, captain, and suspicious death moved quickly from mouth to mouth, from phone to phone, across borders and screens. Leah's parents, far away in their small town, were about to receive a call that would break their world in two. And the man who had ruled a ship like a king was now sitting in a bare interview room, facing detectives who wanted to know exactly what had happened in that cabin, and why a 17-year-old girl, full of hope, would never go home again. The question hanging in the air now was sharp and heavy. Would justice really be served for Leah? Or would the power and excuses that had protected the captain at sea try to protect him on land too? The news of Leah's death spread fast, but it did not spread in the way happy stories do. It moved like a cold wind. At first, there were short reports. A young crew member had died on a cruise ship. The captain was being questioned. The police were involved. Then more details began to drip out. People learned her age. 17. They learned his age. 50. They learned where she was found. In his cabin. Far away, in her small hometown. Leah's parents received the kind of call every parent fears. A stranger's voice told them that their daughter had died at sea. The words were careful and soft, but nothing could soften the truth. Her mother fell to the floor. Her father could barely breathe. Her little brother did not understand at first. He kept saying that there must be a mistake. They had sent their child away to work and see the world. Now the world was sending her back in a box. While they were still trying to understand what had happened, the captain sat in a gray room with 2 detectives. No ocean views, no shiny medals, no staff jumping when he spoke. Just questions. They asked him to tell his story again and again. Each time, they listened for small changes. He said that she had come to talk about her work. He said that she had tripped. He said that she had hit her head and that he had tried to save her. He called it a terrible accident. The detective showed him printed messages, his late-night invitations, his comments about her being special, his hints about promotions. They asked why a man his age, with his power, needed to mentor a 17-year-old alone in his private cabin. They showed him photos of the bruises on her arms and neck. They asked how those marks could come from a simple slip and fall. Slowly, the picture became clearer to them, even if he kept trying to blur it. After days of questioning, after the first wave of evidence was collected, the state announced formal charges. He was charged with murder. In simple words, that meant they believed he had caused her death during a violent act, and that it was not just an accident. They also added charges related to abuse of power and being involved with a minor in a sexual way, even if everything had not yet fully happened. The law did not care if he called it an affair. She was still a child in the eyes of the court. People took sides online, as they always do. Some said it had to be a mistake. They pointed to his years of service, his clean record, the happy photos of him smiling with passengers. They called it a tragic accident. Others, especially crew members and workers from other ships, said that they had seen this pattern before. Older men using uniforms and rank like weapons. Young workers too afraid to say no. Quiet transfers. Missing reports. They said this case was not a surprise, only that this time, someone had died where it was too big to hide. Months later, the trial began. The courtroom was nothing like the ship. No soft lights, no music, just hard benches, clean lines, and the heavy feeling of judgment in the air. On one side sat Leah's family, dressed in simple clothes, holding on to each other. Her mother clutched a photo of Leah, taken before she left for the ship. In the picture, Leah was smiling, eyes full of hope. She had no idea what waited for her. Her father's face looked older than his years. He had not slept well since the day of the call. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as if holding himself together by force. On the other side sat the captain, now in a plain suit instead of a proud uniform, without the white hat and the bright badges. He looked smaller. His hair seemed grayer. His shoulders slumped. Behind him sat his lawyers, neat and calm, holding files and whispering advice. The judge explained the charges in simple language. Murder, causing another person's death in a way that was not an accident, during an attack or a crime. Abuse of power, using your job and rank to control someone in a way that is wrong. Unlawful contact with a minor, trying to start a sexual relationship with someone under the age allowed by law. The captain's lawyers said he was not guilty. They said that Leah had come willingly. They said that she wanted to talk, that she had tripped, that he had panicked and made mistakes, but had not meant to hurt her. They tried to turn the story into a sad misunderstanding. The state's lawyers, called prosecutors, told a different story. They showed the messages he had sent, late at night, asking her to come alone. They called crew members to the stand, who talked about the warnings they had tried to give her. One woman spoke in a shaking voice about how she had told Leah to be careful, how she now wished she had pushed harder, told a supervisor done more. They showed camera footage from the hallway outside his cabin. Leah walked in upright, steady, not drunk. They showed the time she went in and the time the concerned crew member came knocking. They showed how long she had been in that room. They had experts explain the marks on Leah's body, the bruises on her arms from being grabbed, the marks on her neck that suggested force, the angle of the injury on her head that did not match a simple straight fall. They called the doctor from the ship, who told the court what he had seen when he first entered the cabin. He spoke slowly, with pain in his eyes, as he described the scene. The girl on the floor, the captain against the wall, the panic in the room. Leah's mother was too weak to take the stand, but her father did. He told the court about his daughter's dreams, about how she wanted to help the family, about how she had believed this job would give her a better life. He spoke about the last message she had sent, saying that she was tired but happy, that she would tell them more stories when she came home. He described the moment the police called and told them that she would never come home. In that room, you could feel the silence. Even people who had come and thinking it might have been an accident now felt the weight of those words. The captain sat very still while this was said. Sometimes he looked down. Sometimes he looked straight ahead. He rarely looked at Leah's parents. When it was his turn to speak, he said that he was sorry for her death. He said that he never meant for any harm to come to her. He stuck to his story. She slipped. He tried to help. He panicked. He admitted sending the messages, but called them misjudgments. He said he had been lonely, that he had blurred lines he should not have, but that he was not a killer. The jury, a group of ordinary people chosen to listen and decide, watched him carefully. They listened to every word, every detail. They were not there to be moved by uniforms or titles. They were there to decide what was true. The lawyers argued for days. Each piece of evidence was shown. Each witness was heard. Outside the court, cameras waited. People commented online. Some called for harsh punishment. Others still tried to defend the captain. But inside the courtroom, one simple question stood above all others. Was Leah's death an accident? Or was it the result of an act she did not want, forced by a man who abused his power? When the time came for the verdict, the room was so quiet you could hear clothes rustle. The jury returned. They were asked to give their decision on each charge. On the charge of murder, guilty. On the charges about abusing power and being involved with a minor, guilty. Leah's mother let out a sound that was half cry, half sigh. Her father closed his eyes, tears running down his face. There was no joy in that moment, no victory, just the small, sharp comfort of knowing that someone had named what happened for what it truly was. The captain's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked fully broken. But even then, the weight on him was nothing compared to the weight on the family, who would never see their daughter again. Later, the judge gave the sentence. He spoke about trust, about how captains are supposed to protect, not prey on the people under them. He spoke about the age difference, the secret messages, the closed cabin door. He said that the court had to send a clear message, not only to this man, but to anyone in power who might think of crossing such lines. The captain was sentenced to a long time in prison. In simple words, he would likely die behind bars. Outside the court, reporters said that justice had been done, but for Leah's family, there was no real justice. There was only a world with their daughter missing, and a grave where a future should have been. After the trial, the cruise company rushed to announce new rules. They promised more training, more cameras, more ways for staff to report problems safely. Some of that helped. Some of it should have been done years earlier. On other ships, in other seas, young workers heard about Leah and felt a mix of fear and strength. Some decided to speak up about their own experiences. Some refused private invitations they might once have accepted. Some managers started taking warnings more seriously. Leah's story did not bring her back, but it did shine a harsh light on a dark corner. If you think about it, there were so many small moments when this could have been stopped. When the first rumors about the captain started years ago. When earlier girls suddenly left the ship under strange conditions. When Leah was first warned, and someone could have gone further and reported him. When he sent that late-night message, and he could have stopped himself, deleted it, faced his emptiness instead of using her to fill it. So many chances, all missed. You might ask, was this about bad parenting? About mental illness? About the cruise company? About greed? About lust? About pride? The truth is, it was about all of these things mixed together and fed by one main poison: power in the hands of someone who thought rules did not apply to him. Nothing excuses what happened. Nothing turns it into a simple accident. Every small choice, every warning ignored, every moment of silence built the road to that cabin floor. When you hear stories like this, maybe you feel angry. Maybe you feel sad. Maybe you feel scared for your own loved ones who work far from home or trust people with more power. Hold on to those feelings, because they matter. They remind you to listen when someone says they feel unsafe, to take warning seriously, to question people who seem too important to be challenged, to teach young people that saying no is not rude or weak, and that no job, no dream, no promise of success is worth stepping into a room that feels wrong. Leah never got the future she dreamed of, but her story can still change other futures. If you learned something from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.